The microphone feedback lasted 3 seconds. Paulette Wiley counted them while Long Corvin pulled the ring off her finger. He didn't twist it, just yanked straight down, and her knuckle made a sound she felt more than heard. The bouquet hit the grass before she realized she'd dropped it. White roses, already browning where someone's heel had caught them. "You were a project," Long said into the microphone. His voice came through the speakers, thin and amplified, like he was speaking from very far away. "I'm bored of the work." 300 phones rose like a tide. Paulette's mother was crying in the third row. She could hear it, that specific hiccup her mother made when she was trying to cry quietly and failing. The sound carried across the garden, the way certain sounds do when everything else has gone silent. Long threw the ring. It disappeared into the grass somewhere near the altar steps. Her hands went numb. Then her feet. Then the places where the dress pressed against her ribs. She stood there, feeling the world reorder itself into before and after, and the line between them was so sharp she could have cut herself on it. The priest had backed away. He was holding his Bible the way children hold stuffed animals during thunderstorms. Long was walking now, down the center aisle, groomsmen trailing behind him like debris caught in a current. Marcus, who'd given a speech last night about brotherhood, wouldn't look at her. None of them would. The garden smelled like lilies. Someone had spent hours arranging them along every chair, and now the scent was thick enough to choke on. Paulette breathed through her mouth. Her shoes were still in the bridal suite. She'd taken them off before the ceremony because the heels kept sinking during rehearsal. Her feet were bare on grass that suddenly felt too cold. Someone in the audience shifted. A chair scraped gravel. A woman whispered something Paulette couldn't make out, and someone else shushed her. She looked down at her hand, at the compressed line of pale skin where the ring had been for 14 months. Long had proposed during lunch, between conference calls, sliding the box across his desk like a contract that needed signing. "Stand up straight," her mother had always said. "Wallies don't slouch." Paulette stood up straight. She lifted her chin and looked at the 300 people who'd come to watch her marry a man who'd just called her a project. Some were putting phones away, tucking them back into purses with quick, guilty movements. Others were still filming. Her wedding planner stood near the bar setup, face the color of typing paper. The glow of her phone screen pulsed in her hand. The silence had weight now, physical mass. Paulette could feel it pressing against her sternum. She took a breath, held it until her lungs burned, let it out slowly through her nose. She didn't run, didn't cry, didn't call out or demand explanations or fall to her knees like people probably expected. She just stood there at the altar where she was supposed to have said, "I do," and felt every single second as it passed. A man stood up at the back of the garden. Black suit, Korean features, broad through the shoulders in a way that suggested he'd earned it rather than inherited it. He'd been sitting in the last row during the processional, and Paulette had noticed him then because he hadn't been watching. Long walked down the aisle. He'd been watching her. He started walking toward the altar. The crowd noticed. Heads turned, whispers built like static, a low hum that made the air vibrate. He moved through the rows without hurrying. People shifted in their seats to let him pass, their bodies responding to something they couldn't name, a presence that demanded space without asking for it. He reached the altar, climbed the 3 steps, stood exactly where Long had been standing 4 minutes and 20 seconds ago. Paulette was still counting. Her heart, which had been beating so hard she could feel it in her throat, went quiet. The man looked at her. His eyes were dark and steady, holding no pity, no shock, no secondhand embarrassment, just assessment, precise and clinical. "My name is Sung Jang Mi," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried, cutting through the whispers like a knife through fabric. "And you're going to need to make a choice." He reached into his jacket. The movement was smooth, practiced. When his hand reappeared, he was holding an envelope, cream paper, her name on it in black ink that looked hand-drawn, each letter deliberate. Paulette's breath caught. "This is a marriage license," Sung said, holding it between them, not offering it yet, just presenting the fact of it. "The one you signed last month for the Corvin-Wiley merger. The names are easily amended when one party defaults." The garden tilted slightly. Paulette felt her weight shift, her body correcting for something that hadn't moved. "I don't understand," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. "You don't need to." His expression gave away nothing. "You need to decide." Somewhere in the crowd, a woman gasped, older, judging by the pitch. "Long defaulted on more than a wedding," Sung continued. "He defaulted on 3 shell companies, 2 real estate partnerships, and approximately $14 million in loans. The license you signed had contingencies. I'm exercising one. He pulled a pen from his pocket, black ink, gold clip that caught the afternoon light. If you sign this amendment, he said, you walk out of here as Paulette Jiang Mi, protected, solvent, no longer a viral video waiting to happen. If you don't sign it, I leave, and tomorrow morning you wake up to 40 million views, and a reputation that follows you for the rest of your life. Paulette's mouth had gone dry. She swallowed, felt her throat work. Why? The question came out barely above a whisper. Because Long owes me, Sung said. Simple, final, and you're the only asset worth collecting. The pen hung in the air between them. The sun had shifted behind a cloud, and the light in the garden had gone flat and gray, leaching color from everything. Paulette looked at his face. He wasn't smiling, wasn't frowning. His expression was neutral in a way that felt constructed, like architecture rather than emotion. Her mother was still crying. Someone was comforting her. Paulette could hear low murmurs, the rustle of tissue paper being pulled from a purse. 300 people, 300 witnesses. She reached out. Her hand was steadier than it should have been. She took the pen from his fingers. The metal was warm from his body heat. Sung opened the envelope and pulled out the document. He unfolded it once, twice, and held it flat with one hand while leaving space for her signature with the other. The license was real. State seal, notary stamp from last month. Her signature already there from when she'd signed it, thinking it was just another piece of paperwork in the endless avalanche of paperwork that came with marrying someone like Long Corvin. There was a blank line where Long's name should have been, crossed out in neat black ink. Above it, Sung Jiang Mi. Below it, Paulette Wiley. She looked at him. This is insane. Yes, Sung agreed. I don't know you. No, I don't know anything about you. That will change, he said, starting approximately 60 seconds from now, when I tell the priest to continue the ceremony. Paulette felt something crack open in her chest. Not quite laughter, not quite a sob. Something that lived in the space between. She looked down at the document, at her name, already there in her own handwriting from a month ago when the world had been shaped differently. She looked up at Sung Jiang Mi, this stranger who'd interrupted her humiliation with an envelope and a choice that wasn't really a choice but felt like one anyway. If I sign this, she said quietly, what do you get? A wife, Sung said, for as long as you want the job. Her hand moved before her brain caught up. She pressed pen to paper and signed her name across from his. The ink was still wet when Sung took the document, folded it once, and handed it to the priest with fingers that didn't shake. Continue, Sung said. The priest looked at Paulette. His face had gone the color of old snow. She nodded. By the power vested in me, the priest began, his voice barely audible, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Paulette felt the words land like stones in water. Sung reached for her left hand. He slid a ring onto her finger platinum, simple, a single diamond that caught the gray light and held it. Different from Long's ring, lighter. It fit perfectly. Where did you, she started. I came prepared, Sung said. The garden was silent. No one was putting their phones away now. Everyone was recording. This would be everywhere by tonight. Sung looked at the crowd. The reception will proceed as planned, he said, loud enough to carry to the back rows. The bar is open. Then he turned back to Paulette and offered her his arm. She took it. His suit jacket was warm from the sun. She could feel the muscles in his forearm through the fabric, tense and controlled. They walked down the aisle together while 300 people watched, and no one, not one person, said a single word. The car was waiting at the curb. Black sedan, tinted windows dark enough to be illegal. A driver already behind the wheel with the engine running. Sung opened the door. Paulette climbed in, the tulle of her dress catching on the doorframe until he reached down and gathered the fabric carefully, tucking it inside before closing the door with a soft click that sounded final. The world went quiet. The driver pulled away from the venue before Paulette had time to look back. She sat in the leather seat and watched the garden disappear through tinted glass, the white chairs, the lilies, the people who were probably already calling everyone they knew. Sung sat beside her, close enough that she could feel heat radiating from his body but not touching. He was looking at his phone, scrolling through something with his thumb, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. Where are we going? Paulette asked. Somewhere safe. That's not an address. No, Sung agreed. He didn't look up. The silence stretched. Paulette became aware of her heartbeat again. It had finally slowed to something approaching normal. She looked down at her hand. The new ring was lighter than Long's had been. The band was thinner. It caught light differently. "How did you know my ring size?" she asked. "I didn't." Sung glanced at her. "I guessed. Was I close?" "It's perfect." "Good." They drove through Hartford in silence. The city passed by in fragments, office buildings with mirrored windows, parking garages, a construction site where someone had left a crane idling. Paulette watched the streets change from commercial to residential and back again as they merged onto the highway. Traffic was light. They moved fast. "You can ask questions," Sung said after a while. "I have about 200. Start with the most important one." Paulette turned to look at him. He'd put his phone away and was watching her with that same assessing look from the altar, not cold, exactly, but distant. "Professional. Are you going to hurt me?" she asked. "No. Is that the truth or what you think I want to hear?" "The truth," Sung said. "If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have married you. I would have just collected what Long owed and let you deal with the fallout. And what does Long owe you? $14 million, 3 years of creative accounting, and a shipping route through Port Newark that he very generously provided to someone who wanted me dead." Paulette's breath stopped in her throat. Sung noticed. "You're safe," he said. "Not a reassurance. A statement of fact. As long as you're married to me, no one touches you. That's not a promise, that's logistics. Because you're—" She stopped. "Dangerous?" Sung finished. "Yes, but not to you." The car pulled off the highway onto a narrower road that wound through what looked like an industrial park. Warehouses lined both sides, their metal siding reflecting afternoon light in sheets of white and silver. They turned down a private drive. A gate opened, automated, smooth, expensive machinery making no sound, and then they were descending into an underground garage beneath a building Paulette hadn't seen from the street. The driver parked. Sung got out first and came around to her side, opening the door and offering his hand. The garage was empty except for 3 other vehicles. A motorcycle with custom exhaust, a silver SUV that looked armored, and something low and red that Paulette recognized as Italian, even though she couldn't see the badge from here. "This way," Sung said. He led her to an elevator, touched his thumb to a biometric scanner. The doors opened immediately, revealing an interior lined with dark wood and brass fixtures. They rode up in silence. Paulette watched the floor numbers climb. 10, 11, 12, 13. The elevator didn't stop until 20. The doors opened onto a penthouse. Paulette stepped out, and the world opened up floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and charcoal. A kitchen island that looked carved from a single piece of black marble. The space was silent in a way the garden hadn't been. Not empty silent, insulated silent. Like the walls were thick enough to absorb gunshots. Sung walked to a panel near the kitchen and pressed something. She heard locks engage 3 distinct clicks, one after another, heavy and mechanical. "You're sealed in," he said, turning back to her. "No one gets through without my authorization. Not building security, not fire department. No one." Paulette walked to the window. Hartford spread out below her in miniature, all glass and steel, and the winding gray ribbon of the Connecticut River cutting through it. "How long?" she asked. "How long what? How long do I have to stay here?" Sung came to stand beside her. Not close, there was still careful space between them, measured and deliberate. "As long as you need," he said. "Tonight, a week, a month. Until you're ready to face what comes next." "And what comes next?" "That depends on what you want it to be." Paulette looked at him. His reflection in the window overlapped with hers, their images translucent and doubled, like photographs exposed twice on the same negative. "I still don't understand why," she said quietly. "I know," Sung said. "You will." Behind them, the elevator chimed softly. The doors didn't open, just the sound. A reminder that the outside world existed somewhere beyond these walls. Paulette pressed her hand against the glass. It was cold beneath her palm, smooth and flawless. "I should call my mother," she said. "Not yet. She's fine," Sung interrupted, gentle but firm. "I had someone drive her home. She thinks you're on your honeymoon." Paulette turned to face him fully. "You planned this." "Yes. All of it. Most of it. Long humiliating you wasn't part of the plan, but I was prepared for multiple outcomes." He paused. "I'm sorry you had to go through that part." It was the first time he'd apologized for anything. Paulette felt something in her chest loosen slightly, like a knot coming undone. "Thank you," she said, "for stopping me from running after him." "You wouldn't have," Sung said. "You were about to turn around and walk back up the aisle with your head up. I just accelerated the timeline." "How do you know?" "Because I've been watching you for 3 months," he said. "And you've never run from anything in your life." The windows were darkening as the sun set behind the buildings. Hartford lit up slowly, block by block, until the whole city was glowing against the coming dark. Paulette stood there in her wedding dress and watched the light change while Sung Jang-mi stood beside her, silent, and the space between them felt like something she could measure exactly 3 feet, close enough to matter, far enough to remain safe. She thought about asking more questions, about Long, about the money, about what happened next. Instead, she said, "I'm tired." "The bedroom is down the hall," Sung said. "Second door on the right. There's a bathroom attached. Take whatever you need." "Where will you sleep?" "I have another room." Paulette nodded. Started to walk away. Stopped. "Sung," she said. "Yes? Thank you for not lying to me." His expression shifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but something warmer than what had been there before. "You're welcome, Paulette." She went to the bedroom and closed the door. Found a t-shirt in the dresser that smelled like expensive detergent and nothing else. Changed out of the wedding dress and hung it carefully in the closet, though she had no idea why. When she finally lay down in the unfamiliar bed, she expected to stay awake for hours. Instead, she fell asleep in minutes, her body finally giving in to exhaustion, and she dreamed of nothing at all. Paulette woke to darkness and the sound of her own breathing. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then it came back in pieces: the garden, the microphone, Sung's hand offering her a pen, the elevator climbing to the 20th floor. She sat up, found her phone on the nightstand. 3:47 a.m. She'd been asleep for almost 8 hours. Her mouth was dry. She got up and padded barefoot down the hallway, following the faint glow of city lights through the windows. Sung was in the kitchen. He was standing at the counter with a glass of water, still wearing his dress shirt but with the sleeves rolled up. A tattoo wound up his left forearm, intricate lines she couldn't make out from this distance. He looked up when she entered. "Couldn't sleep?" "I slept too much." Paulette came closer. "Now I'm confused about what time it is." 3:48 in the morning. He filled a second glass from the tap and handed it to her. "Your body needed it." She drank. The water was cold, tasting faintly metallic. "Do you sleep?" "Sometimes." "Is that why you're up now?" "I'm always up now," Sung said. "My schedule doesn't follow conventional patterns." Paulette set down the glass. In the low light, she could see the tattoo more clearly. Now a dragon, she thought, though the design was complex enough that it could have been something else. The ink was old, slightly faded. "How long have you had that?" she asked. Sung looked down at his arm. 15 years. I got it when I was 19. "What does it mean?" "It means I was 19 and thought I was immortal." He smiled slightly. "Now it just means I need to wear long sleeves to business meetings." Paulette found herself smiling back. "I have a tattoo." "I know." She blinked. "How?" "Left hip. Small. You wore a dress to the Confrontation dinner last year that showed it when you sat down." He paused. "I was at that dinner. Different table. You didn't notice me." "You've been watching me for longer than 3 months." "I've been aware of you for longer than 3 months," Sung corrected. "There's a difference." The city lights cast strange shadows across the kitchen. Paulette became aware that she was standing in his t-shirt and nothing else, her legs bare, and he was looking at her in a way that wasn't quite clinical anymore. "I should go back to bed," she said. "Or you could stay," Sung said. "Ask me the questions you're trying not to ask." "What makes you think I have questions?" "Because I would." Paulette leaned against the counter. Put space between them again, 3 feet, measured and safe. "Okay. Why me specifically? You said I was the only asset worth collecting, but there had to be others. Long has property, investments, cars, all of which are worthless, compared to what your name represents," Sung interrupted. "Paulette Wiley, 3rd-generation Connecticut wealth, Harvard MBA, impeccable reputation. Long used you as a front for everything. Your signature was on half the shell companies. Your name was on the bank accounts. To the outside world, you were a willing participant." Paulette's stomach dropped. "I didn't know. I know you didn't. But that doesn't matter in a federal investigation." Sung's voice was matter of fact. "If I'd let you walk away from that altar unmarried, you would have been implicated." By marrying me and transferring the assets, you became a victim of Long's fraud rather than an accomplice. So you saved me from prison. I saved you from 20 years of litigation and probable conviction. Yes. The silence stretched between them. Paulette felt her hands start to shake and pressed them flat against the counter to stop it. I didn't just marry you for leverage, Sung said quietly. I married you because letting Long destroy you felt wasteful. You're smarter than him, more capable. And watching you stand there at that altar with your head up while he humiliated you, he stopped. You deserved better. That's not strategic, Paulette said. No, Sung agreed. It's not. They stood there in the dark kitchen while the city glowed outside, and Paulette realized that whatever she'd thought this arrangement was, it was already something more complicated. What happens tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow, Sung said. You wake up, you eat breakfast, and you decide if you want to see the evidence I have on Long. After that, we make a plan. For what? For dismantling everything he built on your back. Paulette looked at him, really looked at him. At the tattoo and the scar near his temple she'd noticed earlier and the way he held himself like someone who'd learned stillness the hard way. I want to see it, she said. The evidence, all of it. Sung nodded. Then you will. He poured them both more water. They stood in the kitchen and drank in silence. And when Paulette finally went back to bed, she fell asleep thinking about the way he'd said her name Paulette, not Mrs. Jiang Mi. Not his wife. Just her name, like it meant something specific. When she woke again, it was morning, and the city outside the windows was bright and sharp and new. The folder was waiting on the kitchen island when Paulette emerged from the bedroom. Sung was already dressed different suit, same controlled posture. He was making coffee in a French press, measuring grounds with the precision of someone following a recipe that mattered. Good morning, he said without looking up. Morning. Paulette approached the island slowly. The folder was thick, packed with papers that had been organized with colored tabs. Her name was written on the front in black marker. That's everything, Sung said, pouring water into the press. Every transaction Long made using your credentials, every shell company registered under your name, every account he opened with your signature. I've marked the sections by category: embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, and the more creative ventures. Creative ventures, Paulette repeated. The parts that cross into trafficking territory. Sung pressed the plunger down slowly. Long was entrepreneurial about his crimes. Paulette pulled out a stool and sat. Opened the folder to the first page. Corvin, Long Augustus. Dob, 4-15, 1980. Investigation opened. The 2nd of November 2024. Subject: financial fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to traffic controlled substances. Her hands were already shaking. She kept reading. The first section was a timeline. Dates, wire transfers, money moving through accounts in Long's name to accounts in the Caymans, Switzerland, Singapore. The amounts made her throat close up hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, flowing like water through companies called Meridian Holdings and Cascade Ventures. These are your companies, Paulette said, looking up at Sung. Were my companies. He set a cup of coffee in front of her. Long was managing U.S. operations for 3 shipping routes: textiles, electronics, legitimate cargo. He was supposed to be moving products. Instead, he was skimming money, falsifying manifests, and selling access to people I don't work with. Who? People who traffic things I don't traffic. His voice flattened. Pharmaceuticals, people, children. The coffee was too hot. Paulette burned her tongue trying to drink it anyway. The wedding was a cover, she said slowly, turning pages. He was laundering money through the vendors. Yes, look at page 12. She flipped forward. Found an invoice for the band, $80,000 for 4 hours of music. They saw maybe 8,000 of that, Sung said. The rest went to an offshore account, Long controlled. Same with the florist, the photographer, the caterer. Every vendor was inflated, and the difference was clean money by the time it hit his accounts. Paulette felt sick. She set down the coffee cup carefully. He used me, she said. He used your name, Sung corrected. Your reputation. You were the perfect front because no one would question Paulette Wiley's involvement in anything. Your family has been respectable for 3 generations. Your credentials are impeccable. You have no criminal record, no questionable associations. Until last year, you didn't even have a parking ticket. How do you know that? Because I ran a background check 13 months ago when Long first started stealing from me. Sung came around the island and sat on the stool beside her, closer than he'd been before, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something understated and expensive. I needed to know if you were complicit or ignorant. And ignorant. You didn't even know what Long did for a living beyond the vague investment consulting description he gave everyone. You never asked questions about the money because you'd been raised not to ask questions about money. Paulette looked down at the folder, at the evidence of every lie Long had told her, every manipulation, every moment she'd ignored her instincts because she'd been taught that Wallies didn't make scenes. "Show me the rest," she said. Sung did. He walked her through every section, explaining the mechanisms of each fraud with the patience of a professor and the precision of someone who'd spent months building a case. There were photographs, Long at restaurants with men Paulette didn't recognize, Long getting into cars she'd never seen him drive, Long signing documents in shipping warehouses, while men in suits watched from the shadows. "Who are they?" Paulette asked, pointing to one of the men. "Buyers," Sung said. "They paid Long for access to shipping routes they couldn't get legitimately. He took their money and gave them manifests that looked clean but weren't." "And you're sure about all this?" "I have audio recordings, video surveillance, and testimony from 3 people who worked with him." Sung pulled out his phone and played a clip. Long's voice, tinny through the speaker, saying, "Sung won't know until it's too late, and by then we'll be untouchable." Paulette's vision blurred. She blinked hard. "I trusted him," she said quietly. "I know. I was going to spend my life with him. I know." Sung's hand moved across the island, stopping just short of touching hers. "But you didn't. You married me instead, and now everything Long owns is technically yours, which means it's protected under my name until we decide what to do with it." Paulette looked at the hand that hadn't quite touched hers, at the calluses on his palm, the faint scar across his knuckles. "What do you want to do with it?" she asked. "I want to dismantle it," Sung said simply. "I want to seize the assets, liquidate the companies, and return the money to the people Long stole from. And I want him prosecuted for every crime he committed. That will take years." "Yes, and you need me for that. I need your cooperation, yes. Your signature will be required on most of the transfers. Your testimony will be valuable if this goes to trial." He paused. "But I don't need you to stay married to me for it. If you want the annulment now, I can arrange that. You'd still be protected, and you'd still get a settlement." Paulette closed the folder, looked at him. "What do you get out of this?" she asked. "Really, not the strategic answer. The real one." Sung was quiet for a long moment. Then, satisfaction. "Long tried to have me killed. He failed, but he got close enough that I spent 3 months looking over my shoulder. I don't like looking over my shoulder. So this is revenge." "This is consequences," Sung corrected. "Revenge would be quicker and messier. Consequences take time and precision. And I'm part of the consequences. You're the part that makes them permanent." He finally closed the distance, his hand covering hers on the island. His palm was warm and rough and steady. "But only if you want to be. I meant what I said at the altar. You have a choice." Paulette looked down at their hands, at the ring on her finger that fit perfectly even though he'd guessed her size. "I want to watch him burn," she said quietly. Sung smiled. It transformed his face completely, made him look younger and more dangerous at the same time. "Good," he said. "Then we start tomorrow. First step is a press conference. We show the world that Paulette Jang Mi is not hiding in shame, she's rebuilding an empire." "I don't have an empire." "You will," Sung said. "We're taking Long's." He stood up, squeezed her hand once, and went to make more coffee. Paulette sat there with the folder in front of her and felt something fierce and bright kindling in her chest. Not quite anger, not quite triumph. Something that felt like power, and she realized she'd never felt it before in her life. The dress arrived at dawn. Paulette heard the elevator chime and opened her eyes to find Sung already awake, standing by the windows with coffee in one hand and his phone in the other, silhouetted against the city turning from gray to gold. "That's for you," he said without turning around. A garment bag hung from a hook near the elevator. Beside it stood a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a measuring tape draped around her neck like jewelry. "Good morning, Mrs. Jang Mi," the woman said, her voice carrying the faint trace of an accent Paulette couldn't place. "I'm Helena. I have 40 minutes to make you unforgettable." Paulette looked at Sung. He was smiling into his coffee. Helena didn't wait for permission. She unzipped the garment bag with practiced efficiency and pulled out a dress that made Paulette forget how to breathe navy silk, with architectural lines, structured but fluid, with a neckline that would photograph beautifully and a fit that looked custom because it was. "How did you—" Paulette started. "I guessed," Sung said. "I'm getting better at it." Helena steered her into the bathroom. What followed was a blur of fabric and pins, and Helena's running commentary about proportion and power, and the importance of looking like you've never tried a day in your life. When Paulette emerged, she didn't recognize herself. The dress fit like it had been sewn on her body. Her hair was pulled back in a low twist that exposed her throat and the line of her jaw. Diamond earrings, where had those come from, caught light like small fires. Her makeup was minimal but precise, the kind that looked effortless in person and flawless on camera. Sung had changed into a different suit. Dark gray, white shirt, no tie. He looked at her for several seconds without speaking. "Is it right?" Paulette asked. "It's perfect," he said finally. "You look dangerous." "I don't feel dangerous." "You will." He came closer, reaching for her left hand. He studied the ring, then looked up at her. "This is going to be the only thing they ask you about." "What should I say?" "Whatever you want. But if you want my advice, keep it simple. We got married. We're happy. Everything else is private." "Are we happy?" Paulette asked. Sung's expression didn't change. "We're going to look happy. That's what matters today." The press conference was being held at a hotel downtown. Neutral territory, Sung explained, somewhere that didn't belong to either of them. Somewhere the press couldn't claim bias. The car ride was silent except for Sung's phone buzzing with messages he ignored. Paulette watched the city pass by and tried to control her breathing. When they arrived, there were already cameras waiting. 30 reporters, maybe more, crowded around the entrance with microphones and recorders, and that hungry look people get when they smell blood in the water. Paulette felt her stomach drop. Her hands went cold. Sung must have felt her hesitate. He reached over and took her hand, his fingers lacing through hers. "Breathe," he said quietly. "You survived yesterday. This is just theater." They got out together. The cameras erupted a wall of flashes and shouted questions that hit like physical force. "Paulette, is it true? Mr. Jangmi, what's your relationship? Was the wedding a sham? How long have you—" Sung's hand tightened on hers. He led her through the crowd without stopping, without acknowledging any of them, his body angled slightly in front of hers like a shield. Inside, the noise faded to a low roar behind glass doors. The conference room was set up simply. A table with 2 chairs, microphones, a backdrop with the hotel logo repeated in subtle gray. More cameras inside, more reporters finding their seats, notebooks out, phones recording. Sung pulled out her chair. Paulette sat. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and arranged the microphones between them with precise movements. "Good morning," Sung said. His voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "I'll make a brief statement, then we'll take questions. Yesterday afternoon, Paulette Wiley and I were married in Hartford. The ceremony proceeded as planned, despite unexpected circumstances. We're here today to address those circumstances, and to make it clear that rumors of fraud, coercion, or anything else currently circulating online are completely unfounded." A reporter in the front row raised her hand. Sung nodded. "Is it true you had a prior relationship with Miss Wiley before yesterday?" "No," Sung said simply. "Then how—" "Next question." Another reporter stood. "Mr. Jangmi, there are reports that you have ties to organized crime. Can you address that?" The room went silent. Paulette felt every camera swing toward them. Sung didn't flinch. "I run a private equity firm specializing in international shipping and logistics. I'm sure you can understand why certain people might find it convenient to spread rumors about my business practices. So you're denying—" Paulette leaned forward. The microphone crackled slightly. "My husband," she said, her voice clear and steady, "runs legitimate businesses that operate in full compliance with U.S. and international law. If you have specific allegations, I encourage you to contact our legal team." Every camera in the room swung toward her. The reporter who'd asked the question sat down. Sung's hand found hers under the table, his thumb pressed once against her palm, quick, deliberate. A signal she didn't know yet, but would come to recognize. "Mrs. Jangmi," another reporter called out. "What do you say to people who think you were coerced into this marriage?" Paulette looked at the woman, at her recorder held out like a weapon, at the expression that said she was hoping for tears, for a breakdown, for something she could turn into a headline. I say, Paulette replied, voice steady, that I'm a grown woman who makes her own decisions. Yesterday I made a choice. Today I'm standing by it. But Long Corvin isn't here, Paulette interrupted. And I'm not interested in discussing him. The questions continued for 20 more minutes. Sung handled most of them with answers that were short and politely unhelpful. When they asked about his business relationship with Long, he smiled and said it was resolved. When they asked about the ring on Paulette's finger, he said it was his grandmother's. Paulette didn't know if that was true. She suspected it wasn't, but it sounded good, and the cameras loved it, and that was what mattered. When Sung finally stood and thanked everyone for coming, Paulette felt like she'd run a marathon in heels. Her legs shook as she stood. Sung's hand on her elbow steadied her. They walked out through the same crowd of cameras, but this time the questions were different. When's the honeymoon? Are you happy? Can we see the ring? Sung stopped at the car, turned deliberately. Let the cameras get a clean shot of him helping Paulette into the back seat, his hand steady on her waist, his expression revealing nothing. The door closed. The world went quiet again. You did well, Sung said. Paulette was shaking. She pressed her hands against her thighs to stop the tremors. I thought I was going to throw up, but you didn't. No, that's what matters. He was watching her carefully. You answered the question about my business. I know. You didn't have to do that. Paulette looked at him. Yes, she said quietly. I did. Something changed in Sung's expression just briefly. So fast she almost missed it. Like a mask slipping, and underneath was something that looked almost like surprise. Thank you, he said. The car pulled away from the hotel. Paulette watched the reporters fade into the distance through the tinted windows, still filming, still hoping for one more shot they could sell. She looked down at her hand, at the ring that maybe had been his grandmother's or maybe hadn't, at the evidence that yesterday had happened, that this was real, that she'd just defended a man she'd known for less than 48 hours on live television. What's next? She asked. Sung was quiet for a moment. Then, we go home, we eat breakfast, and then I show you the full extent of what Long stole, so you can decide exactly how much of it you want back. Paulette nodded. Home, she thought. When had the penthouse become home? But the word felt right somehow, safer than anywhere else she could imagine being. She leaned back against the seat and watched Hartford blur past the window. Sung's hand stayed near hers on the leather, not holding. Not quite, but close enough to feel like an anchor. The message came on Thursday morning. Paulette was in the kitchen making coffee when she heard Sung's phone vibrate against the marble counter. She glanced at it reflexively and saw the notification light up the screen. Unknown number. We need to talk about your situation. She looked away quickly. Not her phone, not her business. But then it vibrated again. And again. Unknown number. Sung isn't who you think he is. You're in danger. Unknown number. Call me. I can help you. Paulette's hand stilled on the coffee pot. She heard Sung coming down the hall. His footsteps were distinctive now. She'd learned to recognize them, and by the time he entered the kitchen, she'd moved away from his phone and was pouring coffee into 2 mugs like nothing had happened. Morning, he said. Morning. She handed him a cup, watched his face as he picked up his phone and saw the notifications. His expression didn't change. He read all 3 messages, set the phone back down, and took a sip of coffee. Long? Paulette asked quietly. Yes. What's he saying? Sung turned the phone toward her. Let her read the messages in full. Paulette felt something cold settle in her stomach. He thinks I'll fall for that. He thinks you're scared. Sung pocketed the phone. He's not wrong to think that. Most people would be. Are you going to respond? No. He set down his coffee cup with a soft click. But I need you to understand that Long is going to keep trying. Messages, calls, maybe showing up places. He's going to try to make you doubt me. And should I? Sung looked at her. I'm dangerous, he said. We've established that. But not to you. There's a difference between being capable of violence and being indiscriminate about it. How do I know the difference? Because if I wanted to hurt you, Paulette, you wouldn't see it coming. You wouldn't have time to be afraid. His voice was matter of fact, not threatening, just honest. Long wants you afraid. He needs you to doubt me because doubt is the only leverage he has left. The coffee was getting cold. Paulette wrapped her hands around the mug anyway, needing something to hold. What if he's telling the truth? She asked. About you being dangerous? He is telling the truth about that part, Sung said. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made decisions that kept me awake for weeks. I've hurt people who deserved it and people who probably didn't." He paused. "But I didn't lie to you. I didn't promise you a future and then destroy you in front of 300 people for entertainment." Paulette's phone buzzed on the counter. They both looked at it. Unknown number. "Paulette, it's long. Please. I'm worried about you." "He has my number," Paulette said slowly. "Of course he does." Sung's voice was very controlled. "He's escalating. He sent those messages to me to see if I'd react. When I didn't, he went directly to you. Another message. Unknown number. You don't know what he's capable of. Meet me. Just for coffee. Let me explain." Paulette felt anger flare hot and bright in her chest. She picked up her phone and typed, "Paulette, you humiliated me in front of everyone I know. You called me a project. Why would I ever meet you for coffee?" The response came immediately. "Unknown number. Because I was trying to protect you. I found out about Sung's business 3 weeks ago and I panicked. I thought if I ended things publicly, he wouldn't come after you." Paulette showed the screen to Sung. "He's lying." "Yes. He's trying to rewrite what happened." "Yes." She typed again. "Paulette, you're a coward and a thief. Leave me alone." She blocked the number. Then she set her phone down and realized her hands were shaking again, not from fear this time, from rage. "He thinks I'm stupid," she said quietly. "He thinks you're desperate." Sung came around the island to stand beside her, close enough now that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "He's counting on you being so scared of me that you'll run back to him. Will he show up here?" "He can't. The building has his photo flagged in the security system. He gets within 50 feet of this address. I get an alert." "What about somewhere else? The grocery store? A restaurant?" "He could try." Sung's voice was perfectly calm. "If he does, I'll handle it." "How?" "However I need to." Paulette looked at him. At the stillness in his face that she was starting to recognize as control rather than calm, at the way his hands stayed loose at his sides, ready but not tense. "I don't want you to hurt him," she said. "I won't," Sung replied. "Unless he tries to hurt you, then all bets are off. And if he just keeps messaging, keeps trying to convince me you're the villain, then you keep blocking him." Sung reached out and took her hands, pulling them away from the coffee mug and holding them in his. His palms were warm and rough with calluses. "And you remember that I gave you choices. I showed you evidence. I had annulment papers drawn up before we even married. Long never gave you choices. He gave you ultimatums disguised as love." Paulette's throat felt tight. "I'm not in love with you," Sung said quietly. "I want to be clear about that. What we have is a strategic alliance that protects us both, but I respect you. I respect your intelligence, your resilience, and your right to make informed decisions. Long respected nothing about you except your last name. Why are you telling me this?" "Because Long is going to try to make you think I manipulated you," Sung said. "And I need you to know the difference between manipulation and honesty. I'm not promising you romance. I'm promising you safety and truth. Those are the only guarantees I can make." Her phone buzzed again. "Different number. Unknown number. You can't hide from this." Paulette felt something snap inside her chest. She picked up her phone, found Long's office number in her contacts, and called it. He answered on the first ring. "Paulette." "Stop," she said. Her voice was steady and cold. "Stop messaging me. Stop trying to rewrite history. I saw the files. Long. I know what you did with Sung's money. I know about the shell companies and the offshore accounts and the trafficking routes. I know everything. He's lying to you." "You're lying to me," Paulette interrupted. "You've been lying to me for over a year. You used my name to launder money, and when you got caught, you decided to humiliate me instead of facing consequences like an adult." She took a breath. "Stay away from me. If you contact me again, I'll file a restraining order." She hung up. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Sung was watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something between admiration and surprise. "That was," he started. "I'm not running back to him," Paulette said quietly. "I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not going to let him gaslight me into thinking I made the wrong choice." Sung smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and changed his whole face. "Good," he said. Then, quieter. "Thank you for defending me again. You didn't have to do that." "Yes," Paulette said. "I did." They stood there in the kitchen while morning light filled the penthouse, turning everything gold, and for the first time since the wedding, Paulette felt like she was standing on solid ground. Her phone stayed silent for the rest of the day, and when Sung reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear before going back to his coffee, Paulette let him, and neither of them mentioned it. The gala was Sung's idea. Hartford Children's Foundation benefit, he said, showing her the invitation. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Long is on the board. He'll be there, and he'll expect you to be hiding. So we go, Paulette said, and show him I'm not. Exactly. The dress this time was black. Not navy, not charcoal, pure, uncompromising black that made her skin look luminous and her eyes sharp as glass. Helena had outdone herself. Sung wore a tuxedo that fit him so perfectly it looked like formal wear was his natural state. When Paulette saw him standing by the windows waiting for her, she had to pause and recalibrate her understanding of what he was capable of looking like. You clean up well, she said. So do you. His eyes moved over her slowly, assessing. That dress is going to cause problems. What kind of problems? The kind where Long does something stupid in public. Paulette smiled. Good. They arrived fashionably late. The ballroom was already full, champagne flowing, string quartet playing something classical that Paulette recognized but couldn't name. The air smelled like expensive perfume and money. Long saw them immediately. He was standing near the bar with two of his groomsmen, the same ones who'd followed him down the aisle. His face went pale when Paulette walked in on Sung's arm. There he is, Sung murmured, his hand warm on her back. Do you want to leave? No, Paulette said. I want to stay. They circulated. Sung introduced her to people she vaguely recognized from business sections of newspapers. CEOs, philanthropists, a woman who apparently ran the largest private equity firm on the East Coast. Everyone was polite. Everyone asked about the wedding in that delicate way people do when they've seen the videos but don't want to admit it. Paulette smiled and gave the same answer every time. It was unconventional, but we're very happy. Long kept watching. She could feel his eyes from across the room, heavy and constant. An hour in, he made his move. Paulette was standing alone near the silent auction tables. Sung had stepped away to take a phone call when Long appeared at her elbow. Paulette, he said. His voice was too loud, slightly slurred. He'd been drinking heavily. She turned to face him. Long, we need to talk. He reached for her arm. She stepped back smoothly before he could touch her. We don't, she said, her voice level. You're making a mistake. His eyes were red-rimmed, desperate, bloodshot. That man is dangerous. He's using you to get to me. You used me to steal from him, Paulette replied. That's not the same thing. People were starting to notice. Conversations pausing, heads turning. This was exactly what Long had done to her at the wedding, creating a scene, forcing her into the center of everyone's attention. But this time felt different. This time, Paulette wasn't frozen. You humiliated me, Long said, his voice rising. You left me at the altar. You married a criminal. I left you? Paulette's voice was quiet, but it carried through the ballroom like a bell. You grabbed a microphone and called me a project in front of 300 people. You ripped a ring off my finger and threw it in the grass. You walked away first, Long. I just didn't chase you. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Even the string quartet had stopped playing mid-phrase. Long's face was turning red. You don't understand what he's capable of. I understand exactly what he's capable of, Paulette said. I've seen the evidence of what you stole from him. I've read the reports about your creative accounting. I know about the shell companies and the offshore accounts, and the trafficking routes you sold to people who wanted him dead. Long went very still. You used my name to commit fraud, Paulette continued, each word precise, measured, landing like stones. You used my reputation to make yourself look legitimate while you laundered money through our wedding vendors. The band we paid $80,000 for? They saw 10% of that. The rest went to an account in the Caymans. She paused. So when you want to talk about who's dangerous, Long, maybe start by looking in a mirror. Someone in the crowd gasped. Not sympathetic, shocked and delighted by the scandal. Long's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Paulette leaned in closer, dropping her voice so only he could hear. You thought I'd be easy to break. You thought I'd hide and cry and wait for you to come save me from the big bad criminal. But here's what you didn't understand. I'm a wily. We don't hide. We don't run. And we certainly don't beg men like you for second chances. She straightened up, raised her voice again. Now get out of my sight before security removes you. Long looked around the ballroom. at the 300 people watching him with their phones out, recording every second, at the faces that had gone from sympathetic to contemptuous in the span of 2 minutes. He opened his mouth, closed it, turned and walked toward the exit with his head down and his shoulders hunched. Nobody stopped him. Nobody followed. The ballroom stayed silent for one more beat. Then someone started clapping slow, deliberate applause that echoed in the high ceiling. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Paulette stood there and felt something shift fundamentally in her chest. Not quite pride. Something bigger and more permanent. Sung reappeared at her side. He didn't ask what happened. He just took her hand and held it while the applause continued, and when it finally faded, he leaned down and whispered against her ear. That was perfect. They left 20 minutes later. Paulette had said her goodbyes, thanked the foundation organizers, smiled for a dozen photos with people who suddenly wanted to be associated with her. In the car, she finally exhaled. I can't believe I did that, she said. I can. Sung was watching her with something that looked like admiration. You've been holding that speech in for months. Years, Paulette corrected. Long wasn't the first man who thought I was just a nice last name and good manners, but he was the last one who'll make that mistake. The city blurred past the windows. Paulette realized she was smiling, not the polite smile she'd been trained to give, but something real and slightly feral. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For stepping back. For letting me handle it. You didn't need me, Sung said simply. You just needed the space to remember that. When they got back to the penthouse, Paulette kicked off her heels and poured herself a drink. Sung joined her by the windows, and they stood there watching Hartford glow in the dark. What happens now? Paulette asked. Now, Sung said. Long's reputation is destroyed, and yours is restored. Everyone at that gala saw you handle him with more grace than he deserved. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the story, not him. And us? What about us? What happens with the marriage? Sung was quiet for a long moment. That depends, he said finally, on what you want. Paulette looked down at her ring. At the diamond catching city lights and holding them like small fires. I don't know yet, she said honestly. Fair enough. Sung touched his glass to hers with a soft clink. When you figure it out, tell me. They finished their drinks in comfortable silence, and when Paulette finally went to bed, she realized she hadn't thought about Long once in the last hour. She'd been too busy thinking about what came next, and when she fell asleep, she dreamed of standing in the ballroom while everyone applauded, and Sung was there beside her, and his hand in hers felt like the only real thing in the world. The papers arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Paulette was reading on the couch something dense and technical about shipping logistics that Sung had recommended when he came home from wherever he disappeared to during business hours. He set a folder on the coffee table in front of her. She recognized the legal letterhead immediately. What is this? She asked, though she already knew. Annulment papers. Sung sat down in the chair across from her, maintaining the careful 3-foot distance they'd established. Everything we agreed to has been accomplished. Long's assets are frozen, his reputation is ruined, and you're safe. The agreement was that you'd have an exit when you wanted one. Paulette set down her book, picked up the folder, opened it slowly. The documents were thorough dissolution of marriage based on fraud. She winced at that, with a settlement that took her breath away. More money than she'd need in 3 lifetimes. This is, she started. Fair, Sung finished. You upheld your end. You appeared as my wife, defended me in public, and helped me collect what Long owed. This is the compensation we discussed. We never discussed a number. I'm discussing it now. He was watching her carefully, his expression neutral. Sign it, and by Friday you'll be Paulette Wiley again. Free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want, with enough money to ensure you never have to depend on anyone. Paulette looked at the signature line, at the space waiting for her name in blue ink. What if I don't want to sign it? She asked quietly. Sung went very still. Then you don't sign it. Just like that? Paulette. His voice was patient. I'm not Long. I don't manipulate people into staying. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to stay, stay. The choice is always yours. But what do you want? That's not relevant. It is to me. Sung leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His hands hung loose between them, relaxed but ready. What I want, he said carefully, is complicated. When I crashed your wedding, I was thinking strategically. You were an asset I could use to hurt Long and protect my business. That was the calculation. And now? Now it's different. He ran a hand through his hair the first time she'd seen him make a gesture that looked uncertain. You're not what I expected. You're smarter than I anticipated, braver than I gave you credit for, and you've integrated into my life in ways I didn't plan for. That's not an answer. The answer is that I want you to stay, Sung said quietly. But only if you want to. Not because you're scared of what comes next, or because you feel obligated, or because the settlement isn't enough. Only if you actually want to be here. Paulette set the folder down on the coffee table. Why? Because you make the penthouse feel less empty. Because you defended me twice without hesitation. Because you're the first person in years who isn't afraid of me and isn't trying to use me. He paused. Because when I come home and you're reading on the couch, I don't want to be anywhere else. The silence stretched between them like pulled taffy. That's not love, Paulette said. No, Sung agreed. It's not. I don't know if I'm capable of that anymore. Too many years of calculated decisions. But it's honest, and it's real, and it's more than most people get. Paulette picked up the folder again, held it for a long moment, feeling the weight of the paper, the weight of the choice. Then she stood up, walked to the fireplace, and fed the papers into the flames. They curled and blackened and disappeared into ash. I'm not signing them, she said, turning back to face him. Sung's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted like light hitting water at a different angle. Why not? He asked. Because freedom without purpose feels like emptiness, Paulette said. And I'm not empty anymore. I'm angry, and I'm rebuilding, and I'm learning what it feels like to stand beside someone who treats me like an equal instead of a decoration. She took a breath. I don't know if this is love either, but I know I'm not ready to leave yet. Yet, Sung repeated. I'm not making forever promises, Paulette said. Neither are you, but I want to stay and see what this becomes. Sung stood up slowly, crossed the space between them in 3 measured steps, stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. If you stay, he said quietly, it won't be easy. My life is complicated. There are parts of my business that you won't want to know about, and people who will always wonder if you're a liability or a partner. I know, and if you change your mind, if you wake up one day and decide this isn't what you want, I'll let you go. No drama, no guilt. Just clean papers and a safe exit. I know that too. Paulette reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the scar near his temple. The skin there was slightly raised, textured differently than the rest. Sung's hand came up to cover hers. His palm was warm and calloused and steady. So we try this, he said. Whatever this is. Whatever this is, Paulette agreed. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, the same chaste gesture from the altar. But this time it felt different. Deliberate. A promise rather than a performance. When he pulled back, Paulette was smiling. What? He asked. I just realized, she said. I've been living with you for 3 weeks and I still don't know where you go during the day. I told you. Business. What kind of business? Sung smiled, slow and dangerous and genuine. The kind that keeps you safe and keeps Long in federal custody. He's been arrested? As of this morning, embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy to commit trafficking. The evidence we compiled was very thorough. Paulette felt something bright and fierce bloom in her chest. You waited to tell me until after I decided about the annulment. I wanted your choice to be clean, Sung said, not influenced by revenge or gratitude. She kissed him then, sudden and deliberate. Not the quick press from months ago, but something real. Her hands came up to frame his face, and he made a sound low in his throat that might have been surprise. When she pulled back, Sung looked dazed. What was that for? He asked. For giving me choices, Paulette said. For treating me like someone who deserves them. They stood there while the annulment papers finished burning in the fireplace, and somewhere in Hartford, Long Corvin was learning what it felt like to face consequences. But in the penthouse, Paulette and Sung were building something new, not quite love, not quite partnership, but something honest and strange, and entirely their own. Dinner? Sung asked. I'll cook, Paulette said. You don't have to. I know. She headed toward the kitchen. But I want to. And that, she thought as Sung followed her, was the difference between everything that came before and everything that came next. The choosing of it. The way he looked at her like she was dangerous too. And that was exactly what he wanted. 6 months later, Paulette woke to snow. It was early December, the city blanketed in white, and she lay in bed watching flakes fall past the windows until she felt Sung stir beside her. They'd started sharing a bed 3 months ago, not dramatically, no declaration. Just Paulette falling asleep on the couch one night while they watched a documentary about maritime law, and Sung carrying her to his room instead of leaving her there. She'd woken up the next morning and decided not to leave. He'd never asked her to. That was still how they worked. Morning. Sung murmured, his voice rough with sleep. It's snowing. I see that. They lay there in comfortable silence, watching Hartford disappear under winter. The city looked different under snow, softer, quieter, like someone had pressed mute on all the sharp edges. The Nakamura meeting is today, Sung said eventually. I remember. You don't have to come. I know. Paulette rolled over to face him. But I'm going to. She'd started working with him 2 months ago, after a conversation about what her role in his empire actually meant. She had an MBA she'd never used, because Long had preferred her as decoration. Sung had handed her a stack of financial reports and asked for her analysis. She'd found 3 inefficiencies in the first hour. He'd promoted her to CFO by the end of the week. We should get up, Sung said, but he didn't move. Neither did Paulette. The snow continued to fall, thick and steady. I've been thinking, Paulette said quietly, about the fact that we've been married for 6 months, and we've never actually talked about what this is. Sung's expression became carefully neutral, his default when emotions got complicated. What do you want it to be? That's not an answer. Neither is your question. Paulette smiled despite herself. We're both terrible at this. Catastrophically bad, Sung agreed. I'm not in love with you, Paulette said. I keep waiting to be, and I'm not, but I don't want to be anywhere else. That's essentially how I feel. Sung reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her jaw. Except I think I might actually be in love with you, and I have no idea what to do about it. Paulette went very still. You what? I think I'm in love with you, Sung repeated, matter of fact. I'm not certain. I've never been in love before, so I have nothing to compare it to. But I think about you constantly. I rearrange my schedule so I can be home for dinner. I bought that specific coffee maker because you prefer it to espresso. He paused. And yesterday, when you were late coming back from your mother's house, I spent 45 minutes convinced something terrible had happened to you. I told you I'd be late. I know. I was still convinced. He paused. So either I'm in love with you, or I've developed an anxiety disorder. Both seem equally plausible. Paulette started laughing. She couldn't help at the absolute absurdity of Sung Jong-mi, dangerous and competent and terrifying, trying to logic his way through feelings like they were a business problem he could solve with data. That's the worst confession I've ever heard, she said. I'm aware. You sound like you're diagnosing yourself with a disease. That's essentially what it feels like. She kissed him. Properly this time, not the quick press from the kitchen, but something slower, deeper, her hand sliding into his hair. When she pulled back, Sung looked dazed and slightly disheveled. What was that for? He asked. Because I think I might love you too, Paulette said. And I'm just as terrible at it as you are. We're a disaster. Absolutely catastrophic. They lay there grinning at each other while the snow buried Hartford, and somewhere in the penthouse, Paulette's phone started ringing with the alarm she'd set for the Nakamura meeting. She ignored it. We should probably get up, Sung said. Probably. Neither of them moved. I want to do the vows again, Paulette said suddenly. The real ones. Sung looked at her. Why? Because the first time was a transaction. I want to choose you when there's nothing forcing my hand. No long, no scandal, no leverage, just us. We're already married. I know, but I want to mean it this time. Sung was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat up, reached for his phone on the nightstand, and made a call. Helena, he said when she answered. I need a dress. No, not for a gala. For a wedding. Yes, I know we're already married. Can you do it? He listened. Good. Today. Another pause. No, not a big production. Just us and whoever can legally make it binding. He hung up. Paulette stared at him. Today? You said you wanted real vows. Why wait? Sung, we've spent 6 months being practical and strategic, and carefully not promising anything we can't guarantee. He took her hand, his thumb tracing over the ring that had fit perfectly from the first day. I'm ready to promise something impractical. Are you? Paulette felt her throat tighten. Yes. Then we do it today. They got married again at sunset. Not in a garden, not in front of 300 people. just in the penthouse, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing the snow-covered city and a notary Helena had somehow produced on 4 hours' notice. Paulette wore a simple cream dress that Helena had pulled from somewhere, probably her own closet. Sung wore the same suit from the gala, the one that made him look like danger wrapped in expensive fabric. There was no audience, no phones, no performance, just two people who'd started as strangers and become something neither of them had planned for. "Do you, Sung Jang Mi," the notary began, her voice warm and professional, "take Paulette Wiley Jang Mi to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Sung said. And then quieter, "I choose you. Every day, I choose you." "And do you, Paulette Wiley Jang Mi, take Sung Jang Mi to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Paulette looked at Sung, at his scarred temple and his controlled stillness and the way he was holding her hand like she might disappear if he let go. "I do," she said. "I choose you too." They didn't need rings, they already had them. They didn't need witnesses, they already knew. The notary pronounced them married again, officially, for real this time, and Sung cupped Paulette's face in his hands and kissed her the way he'd wanted to at the altar 6 months ago but hadn't, because they'd both been pretending this was temporary. When they pulled apart, the city was lit up against the snow, every building glowing like a promise. Paulette realized she was crying. "Happy?" Sung asked, wiping her tears with his thumb. "Terrifyingly so." "Good." He pulled her close, his arms solid around her. "Me too." They stood there at the window while night fell over Hartford, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of someone else's cruelty and decided to build something new from the debris. No more annulment papers. No more exit strategies. No more careful distance measured in feet. Just this. Choosing each other, every single day, until the choosing became as natural as breathing. Outside, Hartford glowed beneath the snow. Inside, Paulette and Sung were finally home, and when she pressed her hand against the glass and felt how cold it was, Sung's hand covered hers, and his warmth was the only thing that mattered.